This is the End Zone. Let's move the chains and welcome to the Full Ride College Football Show heading into week 3 of the college football season. Now, with that being said, I want you to comment your favorite team down below or any questions you have. I read all the comments, and if your question is about a team, about a player, I could definitely make a video more in depth for you there, or mention a team next week. Next week's video, or maybe a video in the future. But let's start off with the week 2, kind of what we know, big storylines. The Big 12 is in trouble. Now, Louisiana Lafayette manhandled Iowa State. Brock Purdy did not look good. Kansas State loses to Lane Hatcher, and Arkansas State narrowly at the end of the game. Coastal Carolina controls Kansas, and Houston Baptist 33, Texas Tech 35. Now, this cannot happen for the Big 12. The Big 12 is a conference that's trying to get better and be one of the top 2 or top 3 conferences. They have Oklahoma, yes. Baylor's been doing well the past 2 years, yes. Texas, many people think they're on the rise. But man, your teams like Iowa State, your teams like Texas Tech, Kansas State. I know Kansas hasn't really been historically good, but you got to have some guys in the middle winning games. The Big 12 cannot afford to go 0-3 versus the Sun Belt in week 1 of the college football season. Very sloppy, not good, and these middle-of-the-pack Big 12 teams, they really have an impact on the overall reception outside of the Big 12, and how people view it. They've got to perform better. Next headline, Ian Book improvement, ? Where is it? Ian Book looks like the same Ian Book, and I said it in the last video. Notre Dame needs to put up more than 40, more than 30 points on Duke to really convince me that their offense is taking the next step. And it hasn't. Ian Book is still the same Ian Book. He's not throwing to wide open receivers. He's not willing to take very many risks. I rarely see this offense just have a simple 3-step drop and pass. Ian Book holds the ball too long. He really wants to scramble, and it's almost like he doesn't trust his arm. Where's that confidence? I do not see it. And, Ian Book, I just don't believe that he can lead Notre Dame to the playoffs unless he starts getting the ball out quicker, unless he starts making these decisions. It's not that he's making bad decisions and turning it over necessarily. It's that he's not hitting guys when they're open. It's about what he isn't doing. So, with that being said, you should really go watch a player breakdown by the QB School on Ian Book. It kind of reinforces with tape what I'm talking about. Next up, Powerhouses doing powerhouse things. So Clemson suffocated Wake Forest, total domination. You kind of saw that coming, but we didn't really want to let down from Clemson. They look like they're in full championship form. It looks like they really didn't skip a beat for the offseason that really they didn't have, or most teams didn't have. In Oklahoma, it looks like they've got another star at quarterback in Spencer Rattler. Yes, I know that they played an FCS opponent, but we knew coming in that he's probably going to be the best quarterback behind Sam Ehlinger, maybe in the Big 12. It's neck and neck. We'll see because they play each other. But it looks like the Powerhouses are still the Powerhouses. No letdowns per se. Lastly, ACC stories. So the ACC had some interesting things. They played well overall, and I liked what I saw. So can De'Aaron King make Miami a contender? That's my first thing. Talk about explosiveness. This guy reminds me of Kyler Murray, the way he runs. So quick, so fast, so agile. Not a fan of Miami's offensive scheme. We'll get into that later. Will this be another FSU season? Mike Norvell has a lot on his hands, not really much of an off season. I don't know what to expect from Florida State losing to Georgia Tech. Did not expect that. That was embarrassing. They played horribly. Are we going to get another bad season from the Florida State Seminoles? It's starting to look like it. Is NC better than ND? I was not as high on North Carolina coming into the season as a lot of people, But after watching Notre Dame and watching North Carolina's offense, North Carolina can put up points. I just don't trust Notre Dame's offense. So North Carolina could potentially be contending for that number 2 spot in the ACC, and I wouldn't be surprised at the slightest if North Carolina beat Notre Dame later in the season. And lastly, with the ACC, will Louisville make a jump in 2020? I love this Louisville offense. The defense, on the other hand, not so good. They're undersized, but they're really, really fast, this team as a whole. Mikhail Cunningham at quarterback, Des Fitzpatrick at wide receiver, Javon Hawkins at running back, Tutu Atwell at wide receiver. They had 2 receivers get over 100 yards receiving. Tutu Atwell at over 70. This offense is clicking. With that being said, let's get into our Week 3 preview and predictions. First, I have Houston and Baylor. Key game for the Big 12. Talk about the middle of the pack. This is a game where the Big 12 needs to prove themselves. Dana Holgerson's potent offense features returning quarterback Clayton Tune and wide receivers Marquez Stinton and Jeremy Singleton. I really like David Anee on the defense. 5 sacks last year on that defensive line. He did that in just 9 games. But overall, this, to me, is a Cougar team that has a lot of talent, and this is a team that should not be taken lightly by Baylor. Baylor also has a returning quarterback in Charlie Brewer, but the Bears lose Matt Rule to the NFL. I like Dave Aranda coaching up that defense coming from LSU. Brewer finished with over 3,000 passing yards through the air last year. I mean, I love Charlie Brewer and what he can do and what this offense can do. I note that they lose Denzel Mims at wide receiver, but I think that this offense and this defense overall is in a better place than Houston. I have Bears winning, but I'm not that confident in it. Could be a close one. Next up, we have Central Florida and Georgia Tech. Look, Georgia Tech barely got by FSU in a defensive, low-scoring affair. In my mind, UCF is a team that has a lot of potential to score a lot of points. The Knights will be able to put up big numbers against Tech. I have no doubt in my mind. I know that they had 10 players opt out, but as we have seen last year, they're either a blowout or a shootout. I don't think Tech can hang and shoot out with the Knights here. Tech hasn't shown me anything that convinces me otherwise. So we're going to go with Central Florida in this one. Finally, our game of the week, Miami and Louisville. This game has fun written all over it. If you haven't really caught up with these two teams, I suggest you watch this game. It's going to be pretty offensive. My favorite underrated quarterback in college football, and De'Aaron King, a super potent Louisville offense clash on College game day at night. Louisville has stars all over this offense. Not only is the offensive line probably top 2 in the country right now of current teams playing, Mikhail Cunningham, he's like a newer version of Lamar Jackson. He's undersized, he can run, he's got a nice throwing motion. Now, this is where I kind of have my problems with Louisville on the defensive side of the ball. They're not looking too good. They didn't look good last year. I don't really see much improvement. Miami not only has a dynamic dual-threat quarterback, but they have Cameron Harris at running back. This guy had 138 yards after contact, and I think that Miami's strategy should be to just run the ball on Louisville, take time off the clock, make this Louisville offense stay off the field, and you can definitely do that with these dual threat players. And I don't love Miami's offensive scheme. I don't know what to think about it. I saw them against UAB. It was pretty iffy at times, but I think that they can keep the ball out of the Cardinals' offense, and they can eventually win this game. We might have a close one. We may have a shootout. Cannot wait to watch this. I'd love to know your opinions, and also comment down below your teams and questions down below for the college football season. Thanks for watching the End Zone. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment so we can move the chains.